Retirement adequacy in the U.S. Should we be concerned? Well, this is an article, white paper from the Society of Actuaries, which I'm a huge fan of SOA, Society of Actuaries, because they're actuaries are mathematical inclined, accountants and things of that nature. They let the numbers do the talking without the minimal propaganda. Isn't that right, Pablo? And so we're going to read this because there's so much in here for you to understand. So basically, if the society, look, man, everyone has biases. I got my own bias for this guy. Mwah, love that guy. Love the Pablo. But I just like Society of Actuaries because there's actuarial science that, and you can't really prove stuff, but you can say, look, based on the numbers and the real crunching of it, we can glom on to some ideas structurally about retirement planning, in particular what we're talking about here. So let's dive into this. The dateline March 2018. Society of Actuaries. Here are the folks who wrote it. Vicky, but I don't know, Smith. Not familiar with her. Then Anna Rappaport. That name sounds familiar. Don't know why. But anyway, let's keep going down. So we got 45 pages. We will not read the whole thing. I trust you, but I've already highlighted it. So you can just hang tight. And your old buddy Josh, with my assistant over there, Pablo, will tell you what to think. All right. Executive summary. The question of whether Americans are adequately prepared for the cost of their future retirements has been a subject of significant debate and research over the last few decades. This is a complex issue about which reasonable and educated minds can differ. Retirement adequacy research has offered mixed conclusions, with some studies predicting a large percentage of the population is at risk for significant hardship in retirement, and others providing a significantly more optimistic approach. The most common method for measuring retirement adequacy is to calculate a replacement ratio, a post-retirement income ratio of post-retirement income to some measure of pre-retirement income, and then to compare this value to the target percentage replacement that is deemed adequate, quote unquote. The data for this calculation are generally drawn from national surveys or employee records, and the analysis can be at the population level or by subgroup, income or age. This approach has four main problems. One, there are many ways to measure both the numerator and the denominator of the ratio. Two, there isn't an agreed upon definition of what constitutes adequate replacement ratio. Wow, that's number one in my opinion. Three, focusing on replacement ratios at the date of retirement ignores changes in individual in income and expenses that may occur over the retirement period. And four, target ratios do not consider individual circumstances. They talk about another thing called wealth-based measures of adequacy, but very few people talk about wealth-based measures as replacement ratios, but most people talk about. Several research groups have developed metrics for assessing retirement preparation at the population level. Examples include the National Retirement Risk Index, which is the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College. I've done studies on that or videos on that before where I take issue with their findings. The Aon Hewitt Real Deal, I just did a video the other day on that where I take issue with their findings and how they fund the National Institute for Retirement Security and how they're all scratching each other's back for sure. And then the Retirement Readiness Rating at the Employee Benefit Research Institute. I'm familiar with it. I haven't done any, at least I don't think I've dived deep into that. But of all those three, the EBRI is the one I respect the most. All right. Although the major studies reviewed in this report have significant differences in empirical approaches, data, and measures of adequacy, they relatively consistently conclude that from 25 to 35% of the population is at risk of being unable to maintain their pre-retirement standard of living through the retirement period. However, these results should be tempered by Society of Actuary research based on surveys, focus groups, and in-depth interviews, which, and I highlight here, generally indicate that many retirees are quite content with living at lower standards of living in retirement than they maintain during their working years. So, again, those studies, what previously cited, consistently conclude that between 25 and 35% are at risk of being able to maintain their pre-retirement living standard. But based on research from the Society of Actuaries and others, indicate many retirees are quite content at living below their pre-retirement living standards. When we use less generous measures of retiree needs, such as consumption-based measures or minimum needs measures, which is what I do, the percentage who are at risk is naturally lower. The research shows that a large majority of Americans are on track to support a reasonably comfortable retirement. Pamo's looking out the window. What are you looking at, dog? So let me repeat that. The research shows that a large majority of Americans are on track to support a reasonably comfortable retirement. The people who are at less risk are those in the highest income groups who have many types of income and assets to support their retirement, and those who have participated in employer-sponsored pensions and retirement plans throughout their career. So again, remember the crazy say the 401k is evil. The 401k is insufficient. The era of DIY retirement planning is gone. Here they are. The people who are at least risk are the people who are involved in employer-sponsored retirement plans. For the lowest income groups, Social Security will replace a substantial proportion of pre-retirement earned income. Those who face the greatest challenges include vulnerable populations, disabled, widowed, and divorced, and particularly divorced right there. People employed in industries or jobs that typically do not provide retirement benefits to workers. These groups do tend to be underrepresented in existing research studies. I don't deny that in the least. A lot of people who don't have 401ks are the ones most at risk. But that's not debatable in my opinion. And so, but the idea that the 401k is the problem is not. The idea is that 401k is the solution. Where some of these people, really coming from the left, the EPI, employee policy, or something policy, I think it's Employee Policy Institute, the NIRS, the National Institute for Retirement Security, they're all saying that it's the 401k plan that is bad, and that's causing people to be essentially bankrupt in retirement. And this is the exact opposite. 401k is a solution. The current system of voluntary employment-based retirement plans has been largely successful from the perspectives of company sponsoring plans for individuals with long-term employment covered by such plans. Thus, if the whole goal is to make people more comfortable in their own retirement, the voluntary, not pensions, but defined contribution plans has been largely successful from the perspective of companies sponsoring plans for individuals with long-term employment covered by such plans. Thus, the more people have access to the plans and the longer they're covered by the plans, the more likely they're going to be successful in retirement, which is a 180-degree difference from what the naysayers say. They say the 401k is making people not successful in retirement, and the evidence is so overwhelming against that scenario. I don't believe any of those people. I can't listen to them because I say this is nuts. Now, what does that say? Well, we want you to actually be in a company that has a 401k plan, A, and two, it'd be nice if you could stay at a company that provides one. It doesn't have to be one. It could be 1, 2, or 3. I don't care, but it'd be nice for you to stay, to get vested in the company, or companies in the plural, that consistently provides 401k plans. Similarly, the mandatory Social Security system has done much to reduce poverty in old age. However, adequacy studies using replacement ratios may overstate the success of the safety net for those in the lowest income groups because too many rely solely on Social Security as their sole source of support and therefore do not have any financial cushion to meet emergencies. And given that reliance, it will be important to understand solvency issues in a way that continues to protect our most vulnerable citizens. Come on, hold on a sec. Copy. Come here, bud. Let me get this guy because he wants to be at space time. For households without access to employer retirement plans, Social Security will still prove a base level of lifetime inflation-adjusted income, but this alone will not allow them to maintain their pre-retirement standard of living. Considering the generally low levels of household wealth, these households will usually need some combination of delayed retirement and Social Security claiming, continue to work at older ages, increase savings. Okay, but again, Social Security will not allow them to maintain their pre-retirement standard of living. Okay, as we already talked about, a lot of people are quite comfortable with a lower than pre-retirement standard of living. All right, so let's keep going. The significant difference in methodologies that are used in retirement adequacy research makes direct comparisons of results more difficult. Some important distinctions based on assumptions in the model include the following. And what did my comment here say? So let me, Oh, don't agree here at all. Okay. Most studies do not adequately account for major unexpected expenses or shocks, such as poor investment performance, long-term care, death of a spouse, out-of-pocket medical expenses. I completely disagree with that. It's the whole thing with the Monte Carlo analysis. It says, look, if we look at 2007 to 2009, that is adequately accounting for performance and poor investment performance as an unexpected shock. You can absolutely add a big expenditure like the right capital software I can use. You can absolutely add that to it if you want to say, hey, if I have this shock in the future, what would that do to my retirement plan? Most studies assume that adequacy objective is to maintain pre-retirement living standards. If retirees are satisfied and reasonably happy with a lower level of spending, this assumption may understate the degree of adequacy in the system. I 100% agree with that. Studies differ significantly on the treating of household wealth. If housing wealth is accessible to meet retirement needs, overall adequacy is higher, i.e., the need to get a reverse mortgage. Why would you not consider that as part of the thing? Hold on just a second. My man here. Let me pause here. I'm going to let him go wander around. Hold on just a second. Just let my financial planning assistant take a bathroom break. We'll see if he comes back in here. Most studies focus on the retirement adequacy of current and near retirees. Future cohorts of U.S. retirees face more difficulty than today's retirees because of demographic issues, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but I mean, that's at the end of the day, we're just, right now, the concern is the people in the 50 and above bracket, in my opinion. Look, if you're 30, 35, I want you to plan for retirement, but there's no way for you to sit there and say, my plan is solid. You just don't know, because we don't know what the future is going to hold. So right now, if you're in the 50 years old, or later, we need to be thinking about retirement planning for you. And that's the, in my opinion, the sole thing that matters when it comes to retirement planning. All right, so let's keep scrolling down here, see what else I got. The introduction, I just kind of went over that, and we talked, all right here. All right. Based on analysis of the March 2014 Current Population Survey, the EBRI, the Employee Benefit Research Institute, reports that 51% of all workers are employed at a firm that sponsors a retirement plan, and 40.8% participate in this plan. Now, this number right here gets a lot of negative. I'm telling you, this is where it goes back to, what are we neglecting? We're guilty by omission. Let me repeat this. 51% of all workers are employed at a firm that sponsors a plan. So basically half the workers have a firm that sponsors a plan, and 40.8, we'll just say 41% participate. However, among full-time, full-year workers, 49.2% of private sector and 81.7% of public sector workers participate in a plan. So when you factor in the college kids like Maddie and the youngins that just graduated from college, around half of private sector employees participate in a plan at work, and more than 80% of public sector. So if you factor in, let's say 20% of the population is the public sector, we can make a quick guesstimate here, and I don't know if that's true, but we'll just say that maybe it should be less. Take my trusty pencil, we say, okay, so 20%, there we go. Hold on just a second. So we get 82 times 0.2. All right, so 82 times 0.2. So we go to a Trusty Calculator. Again, get your own Trusty Calculator. Link in the show notes. Times 0.2. That means, 0.8 times 0.2. That's 0.16. And then we got 49 times 0.8. That's 0.39 plus 0.16. That means 55% of all employees are participating, and that's if the 20% of the workforce is public sector, are participating in a plan, a retirement plan of some sort. Whereas if we look at all workers, only 40.8% is. Does that make sense? So essentially 55% or 15 divided by 40, that's 37.5% more than what the naysayers would say. Only 40% of the people are participating in the plan. But if we look at just all full-time, full-year workers, not the ice cream shop person scooping out over the summertime, not Maddie working at retail on the mall during the Christmas break. If we look at full-time, full-year workers, 55% of the people are participating in a retirement plan at work, which is 37% more than what the naysayers say. Some industries such as farming and retail, there you go, have very low sponsorship and participation rate. Yeah, so we got a lot of farm hands, and we got a lot of retail, which is what Maddie does. So, I mean, if you look, when I worked retail, I never had a 401k plan. I'm just telling you right now. So the idea that someone has a 401k plan, whether waiting tables, bartending, working retail, just silly. So to use this number right here, 40.8% only have retirement plans is a guilty by omission of some important data. Let's keep going down. All right. What do I say? Not correct. Okay. Given that U.S. savings rate are relatively low, less than 4% in 2017, it's not right because they're not taking into consideration the high taxes we pay for Social Security. So if I'm saving 4 to my 401k, I'm saving 6.2 to Social Security. My employer is saying 6.2 to Social Security. It's actually 16.4%. It's about 18.5 right now when you factor in the savings rate today in 2018 and even in 2019 is about 6%. 6% on my own, 6% for Social Security, 6% on employer Social Security. Let's keep going. All right, so we're going to talk down here. Challenges to measuring retirement adequacy. As discussed in the previous section, retirement income adequacy and retiree well-being may be defined differently depending on the perspective of the researcher and the objectives of the research study. Yeah, you think? So if I'm trying to push an agenda that we need more government and less freedom, I'm going to have a different perspective on the adequacy of retirement by saying they need more money to replace and the less people are participating in 401ks. And even Pablo doesn't agree that he is back. Pablo's back. Yeah, so depending on the perspective and the objectives, are there really objectives of research study? We're going to prove that everyone's going to go broke unless the government takes over. The primary advantage of replacement ratios for analysis of retirement income adequacy are that the ratios are easily explained, can be compared over time, and may be used for individuals or the entire population. Although replacement ratios are by far the most common way to assess adequacy of retirement, these measures are often criticized. We already talked about that, but yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes even by those that are using them. So whenever you hear replacement ratios, or whenever you hear about retirement is fine or is not fine, the first question is, why do you say that? Where are you getting the number for it to be fine or not? Well, because we're using replacement ratios that are 85% of pre-retirement income or 20% of pre-retirement income. I mean, whatever it is, you want to know. A further variation on the replacement ratio concept is to measure the percentage of actual consumption needs that will be met for expected retirement income. This is the only thing that matters. What do you need, and from where is that money going to come? Compared with ratios calculated as a percentage of pre-retirement income, this formulation is a better measure of adequacy because anything less than 100% means retirees would experience shortfalls due to cutbacks in current consumption and or future shortfalls by spending down assets too quickly. Most ratio-based studies define the target as something less than 100% income replacement, but the adequacy bar can be much lower if the income measure being used is pre-retirement income as opposed to post-retirement consumption. So what they're saying is, look, forget the pre-retirement income replacement ratio. We need to know what the consumption is. What are we going to consume? Because we need 100% of that consumption. So if you need $40,000 a year to live on to make all your payments, if I don't care how much you have in your savings, I don't care what you have in 401k, I don't care what I don't care what your Social Security is. We got to get $40,000 a year. Done. That's what we need. Your replacement ratio doesn't matter. It's your income, your consumption needs that we have to point out. That's just all. That's all that matters. How much do you need, and can we make it work? Right, Pablo? All right, let's keep going here. I know it's a long one, but lots of good stuff in here for sure. All right. Although most retirement adequacy studies measure needs based on pre-retirement income or consumption, Society of Actuaries focus group and in-depth interview research suggests that many retirees are satisfied with much less than pre-retirement income ratios. So they don't need to maintain their standard of living. Many are satisfied with much less. It's difficult to measure, place a value on leisure, of course, but the facts are many retirees that they survey say they're doing just fine, even though they have less replacement income and a lower standard of living than they did when they were working. Yeah, see, that's the issue. Assumptions used for measuring needs are influenced by available data, the stakeholders' objectives, and convenience. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I say here. In other words, open to interpretation, exactly. Or open to bias. Not Pablo. All right, so let's just keep going down. Shocks, a lot, and I'll put links in the show notes for this. Percentage of income from each source. I didn't really want to go into that. Yeah, I'll put the link in there. But let's keep going down here. Where else we got? All right, hold on. So a couple of things they use. Yeah, Heard Rodwetter, James Vanderhei. Yep, Rappaport right there. That new from Society of Actuaries. Right on. Okay, good. I knew Anna Rappaport. I said, I know I've read her research some other place. I just couldn't remember off the top of my head. All right, so let's go down to the conclusion here. Hold on, we got to see Aon right there. Alicia Monell over Boston College. Aon Hewitt. Oh my goodness, we need 85% of pre-retirement income. Yeah, crazy. Let's see. Anyway, you can look at all this stuff if you want. I'm not going to bore you here. Let's just go down to the conclusion. All right, hold on just a second. All right. I probably could just pause, but I don't feel like it. Okay, well, I guess that's it. I guess I didn't highlight anything from the conclusion. Let's just real quick see what they say. In the last several years, many studies have looked at retirement adequacy and retiree well-being. In this report, we review recent studies that evaluate these issues. After careful consider of this body of research, it's clear that U.S. retirement system lies somewhere between crisis and serendipity. The research shows that a large majority of Americans are on track to support reasonably comfortable retirement. All right, that's the end of the day. The research shows that the large majority of Americans are on track to support a reasonable comfort and retirement. And then on top of that, they interviewed individual retirees, and they all say the same thing. Done and done. The current system of voluntary employment-based retirement plans has been largely successful. It's good to be validated. All right, so that's the Society of Actuaries. I'll let you read it for yourself if you want, but excuse me. But it's good stuff. And again, the widowed which is why I always say you got to look at the widow's tax trap. Divorcees and disabled are in tough. I mean, that's not. Look, it's not. Life isn't a beach for them. But at the end of the day, there's no retirement crisis for the vast majority of Americans. So we can finally put that to bed and say, yeah, the Society of Actuaries looked at all the data, and I'm very comfortable reporting back their findings that we are going to be good to go. All right, and Pablo says, yes. Hi, Pablo. Hi. All right, we'll see you. Oh, he loves. Look, you want to give me a kiss? Give me a kiss. You want to give me a kiss? Oh, look at that dog. Look at it. Have I ever showed you guys his stuff? Look at that. See how he's got that right there? That's where we think he got. See how he got this scar? I can't really see the scar, but he's got a scar there up in his upper body, right there. See that? Is it this side or that's this side, I think. Yeah, right there. He's got that scar. We think he got dragged across the street or something like that. Ugh. Anyway, all right, we'll see you.